and obviously there'll be some feedback and then probably be fleshed out a little more. But I think it's an absolutely wonderful idea. That's number one. Now, technically, because this is sort of like an emergency election we're having at the next meeting, there won't be a nominating committee, although we would probably have to pick 5 people to count the ballots, so that, you know, in that sense. But as Catherine mentioned, there'll just be nominations from the floor, and then we'll have an election. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I think we'll pass it to Ebenezer. No.
Just so I was gonna say, and Daryl, is that a new? Well, sorry, hands for the infographic. Was that Daryl and Marielle for?
No, Marielle's hand I can't put.
Yeah, mine was a live one. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just real quick, just including August.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, there's some prep work for August with that.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to share in the in terms of the chair report, is for folks as and we have time on tonight's agenda to talk about just like your first hybrid meeting and how that went. Start thinking particularly for chairs, who are your supports for minutes? Who are your supports for your Zoom? Right, if you don't have an assistant chair, or if you do have an assistant chair, you know, how are you distributing tasks within your committee? Letters went out this summer around catching up on minutes. And that's some, you know, by city charter, we have to have minutes for our meetings. So if you're still behind and need to catch up, please talk to me. You know, we want to be able to coordinate ways or support methods to be able to get these minutes done and filed on time. And we definitely don't want it to be a full calendar year that has to get, you know, done at the last minute. So that'll be my one thing. The other thing that Mary alluded to me to that I completely forgot in this rush is that we didn't do introductions, and we do have folks both present and online who are watching. So if we can we'll start with people in the room real quick. If you can just introduce yourself for the record, and then we'll go to our Zoom participants. So, you know, okay. Catherine Diaz, and I am the chair for CB12. And to my left,
Mary Anderson, I'm the chair of the Aging Committee, and also I'm on the Traffic and Transportation Committee.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Juliana Alcover Ramirez, and I am the Assistant Secretary to the Executive Committee and Assistant Secretary to the Public Safety.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Isidro Medina. I am the chair of the License Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Maria Hernandez. I'm the first vice chair now. Thank you. And I'm also on licensing.
Domingo Estevez, the chair for Youth and Education.
We have a public member.
Oh, right, that's all.
Thank you for coming.
I see Michelle on Zoom, so maybe we'll start with Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Lee. I am the treasurer for CB12, and I'm also on the Housing and Human Services Committee. I'll pass it to Jim, yeah.
Hi, I'm Jim Berlin. I'm the parliamentarian. Technically, for any newcomers, I'm here, but I'm not officially a member of the executive committee, so I don't get to vote, but I do get to participate.
Anyone else on Daryl? Oh, Daryl.
Hi, good evening, Daryl Cochran. I'm chair of the Bylaws Task Force.
And then I think Marielle, right?
And Emily.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Marielle Ali here, Chair of the Housing and Human Services Committee.
Perfect. I think Emily is on also.
Yeah.
Emily.
Oh. All right, well, for folks who are new to the executive committee basically makes up, gotcha, Indiana.
Oh.
So executive committee makes up essentially all the committee chairs and the elected officers, and we tend to speak mostly about like administrative matters and updates in terms of like what supports do committee chairs need, or, you know, any kind of like, we also vote on matters that are pressing that aren't able to make it before the general meeting. So here, we also hear from our district manager, and we're gonna pass it off to him right now to, for his report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Always is a pleasure being here as your district manager. As you said before, we had a very busy summer here at the office. Under your leadership, with the help of Paola, Chanel, and the summer youth that we have, we were able to purge the files in the office and organize certain files to be scanned to have everything digital. Was a very busy summer. We have some update. Also upon your direction and request, as you can see in the room, we removed part of the equipment that was installed there in 2019 by our former chair, Richard Lewis, to have, live stream. You see that we have more room in the available for us. And that room, even this available, is not available because we have equipment stored there that we need to make a decision what we're going to do with them. But that was a very busy summer that we had. Now I have a few updates regarding staffing here. Last month, Chanel Paniagua, she's presented to us her resignation starting October 26th. She decided to go with her life with another path and going to other countries, et cetera, et cetera. As a result, we will have a vacancy that we are working with the chair and the board of president's office at OMB to see how we can replace, and also if we can have a part-time employee that can help us, especially with the setting of these meetings, that every setting is a little challenge here and there. And also another announcement that I have from our staff, Paola Garcia, she will have to take to be under surgery to repair her right leg. The surgery was scheduled for today. Nevertheless, has to be rescheduled because last week she got an eye infection on her left eye, and the surgery for the knee repair has to be rescheduled. So we have this challenge, and we are working since we learned this news. The chair and I try to have replacements here and working on a posting to have a staff that can help us. Last week and the week before was the first time that we really went live and try the hybrid meetings. Even though we had several rehearsals during the summer here, even though I had a district service cabinet meeting in July, when we first tried to, for the first time here was a few challenge the first day on the first meeting on the 6th, Wednesday, September 6th. We have some challenge in those meetings, but then we were able to easy the challenge, et cetera, et cetera. Today we are trying a new setting, having the owl on the table. So let's see what happened, and we're going to be updating it. Thank you for your patience on this matter. This is the end of my report. Is there any question?
I did want to have an add-on to Ebenezer's report. Sorry, in terms of the physical equipment, we are looking. Some of the high schools, one of the high schools, George Washington, they're building a live stream lab for their students who study nursing and whatnot. So they're gonna come and check out the equipment. We can perhaps donate to them. If it doesn't work, if somebody else has a backup, feel free to send that information over. We want to make sure that obviously it gets used and that the tech is appropriate for whatever it's going to be used for. So that's one big thing. And then I think to Ebenezer's point, the staffing changes are major. And I think one in terms of the positive is that means we finally got a part-timer, right? So we will be able to now have a total of 4 staff, 1 part-time and 3 full-time. Until we get to that point, we are going to have those gaps, and while we've talked about some of the strategies to lessen that, we definitely are gonna feel that impact come November, come December, when we're down just to Ebenezer in the interim of the part-times being able to start. So I don't know if there are any hands up.
Mhm. Not on the thing.
I
Hold
just-
on one, Michelle.
Yeah.
What is plan B? Once Paola leaves and Ebenezer will be by himself, how can we assist as a board?
Yeah.
Maybe to alleviate the problem. I'll be more
So-
happy to assist in executive.
Oh, that's great to hear, Cesar, because one of the things, Simari, me and Ebenezer were talking about is a call for the board. So one is that we are getting on, interns, high school interns for the most part, 18 to 24-year-olds. Not that age has to do with it, but that's more or less, where they're at. And so those participants, because there'll probably be a mix of later in the day, we'll have them more for like helping with the meeting setup, helping them, just to kind of staff the office, any phone support, stuff like that, so that Ebenezer is able to focus on the other pieces, like the district service cabinet, like the must-haves. We've talked also about changing, for example, our phone lines, our email structures, so that folks get automated responses and we can take a couple more and then let people be aware, right, that we're experiencing staffing changes. So it might take a little longer for us to get back to folks. So, let that be written via email and the voicemails. And then we talked about that. If there are board members who are able to contribute some time, whether that's for meeting prep, like the general meeting,
Or assisting in your own.
or
committee
assisting, at certain meetings but we have to kind of work a little bit on that, what that list could look like. And especially Ebenezer and Paola, what can actually be delegated and, what's more sensitive.
meeting. Michelle.
Hi, my question is around some of the hiring process. Just wondering if we need to submit a PAR to OMB just to get the extra budget approved for those positions, and then kind of what you think the hiring process looks like, and kind of like almost a bit of a timeline on how long you think it'll take too.
Yeah. Let me pull it up actually. And I get to share that side, folks. So essentially what ideal timeline is that and sorry, OMB did approve it, but the PAR is not needed yet, if I remember correct, Ebenezer. So we have to send over the job scope to the borough president's office. And the goal is to do that by next week. So the full board has to vote on any hiring. So essentially, and the roles have to be posted for 30 days because of civil service. So for what's next month, October? So the goal is to have the part-time role target vote in November, because that'll give the month that it has to be posted. So that'll be end of October, interviewing all of that. And then Ebenezer will present to the board and the exec, the final candidates. And then the full-time role, because Chanel's last day is the 27th, end of October. Once she's gone, then we can actually post her position. So we would post that for October 30th, with the target to be able to vote on that final candidate for the December meeting. So they're gonna be one in November, one in December, with target start date for what would be Chanel's role or former role in January, and the part-time community aid in December. So that part-time person would actually start back if Paola's recovery is on track together.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that. So we'll need resos for all of these like the actual hire at the end.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Thanks.
Well, the process will be that we present the candidate to the executive committee, and the executive committee will select one of the candidates, and then that selection need to be rectified before the general meeting. That's the process we did before.
Okay, the ratification is a vote.
Yes, the executive committee will select the final candidate. We try to present at least 2 candidates for each position. We selected the executive committee 1 candidate, and that selection and job offering need to be presented to the full board for ratification. We have all the paperwork we did to hire Chanel. That was the latest hiring that we had, and also Paola promotion at the same time happened. So we have all that very fresh because that happened in 2019.
okay. Jim has his hand up. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something. Technically, the board, the process that's been described is clear. The board hires this person. That's why the board itself has to vote on it. Now, the board presumably, generally, the executive committee, the board follows the lead of the executive committee, but technically, we could go into executive session and talk to this person. Ideally, none of that should be necessary. But I just wanted to point out that technicality and the actual vote to hire the person, because it involves spending money, has to be in the public session. General meeting thing. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Okay. I don't see any other hands. Ebenezer, did you have anything else for your report?
No, thank you very much. God bless you all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, so we have the October and November calendars. They should be in folks' inbox. We have them here physically. Yes.
Slight change for licensing. Licensing starts at 6:30, not 7. That applies for both calendars.
Right, any time changes specifically now with what's going on? Anybody else? I don't see any hands. Just opening it, okay.
Doesn't help the environment, sir, 6:30.
No, because we're back to in person.
Okay,
So
got it.
let's see this done. All right, so I don't hear, licensing spoke up for October, November. Anybody else on the November calendar? Take a note that the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Steve, go ahead.
Now, executive in general, don't we meet at 6:30?
Yes, thank you. Steve?
I want, well, Marielle is raising her hand, so I assume she's gonna make the point I was about to make, so I yield to Marielle.
That's exactly right, Steve. Where's housing for November? We're missing.
All right, I was gonna speak up on your behalf, but it turns out not to be necessary.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you looking out for us. So yeah, if we could be added for Thursday, November 2nd, please.
Yeah.
And Steve, actually, I noticed it says here health and environment at 7 rather than 6:30.
Yes, we've
And housing
decided,
at 7.
we've decided that since we're now meeting in person, that
Okay.
we're gonna go back to our old time.
To 7. Okay. Super helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll be fighting to get into the elevator at the same time.
All right. Okay. All right, so Daryl,
Yeah.
You're just gonna want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done this with the past calendars this year. The third Wednesday is what we agreed upon for the bylaws task force. But I know those are just for board members, not the
Is it
public.
at 7 or at 6:30?
7.
7, all right. Third Wednesday, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, cool. So that covers October, November, unless I see any other hands. None. All right, so I would like to make this into like a lightning round situation on our next agenda item. Meaning we're gonna just fly through real quick. Because we could talk about it all day. So considering that this was the first time that committee chairs or committees went hybrid, what went well, what needs work, what's missing? We'll start with Isidro. He jumped in then Marielle, go ahead.
So my committee went really well, with exception of an echo. And it was minor, but it was there. That was the only complaint that I received from those that were attending. Otherwise, everything was perfectly well.
Okay. Marielle?
Thanks, Catherine. Two things. We also had a little bit of an issue with the echo. And then halfway through, I remember at one point, like the audio stopped working. And so I wonder if it would be helpful. I know, at least for me, maybe like a printout that says, do this, or, turn on this, turn on that. I'm the least like tech savvy person ever. And so I would probably find that quite useful, especially after the staff leaves, because we had an issue after the staff left and we had to kind of sort it out. Thankfully, we were able to do so. That's a suggestion. The other thing is, I think, just a little bit of clarity around those who are participating virtually and those who are participating in person and what that means. I know that you all have done a really good job of trying to flag that, but I think continued messaging around that, because I'm still kind of mixing it up a little bit, would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go back to the room. Mary, forward.
We had a little trouble with getting started at our meeting, but I think eventually, once we all got on board and got everything working, it went okay. It's my first experience with any of this, and it was a little, discombobulated, but we made it.
Domingo?
Well, it's good to be back in person. I feel like as far as went well, all the paperwork was on point. As far as what needs work, the technology, I feel like I also had the echo situation going on. And what is missing, I just feel like, it's something new for individuals who became board members during COVID, but I'm just happy we're back to in-person meetings and being actually able to engage with individuals on the board.
I have to say that's different from my committee. My committee members are not happy to be back in person. It's leaving their job,
Oh, yeah,
trying to find parking, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a discussion going on.
yeah.
All right, Liz?
It was horrible. It was chaotic. It totally sucked. I hated it. I have very little good to say about it. It's not anybody's fault. There isn't anything that the office did wrong. That's not like a performance evaluation thing. I think that hybrid meetings do not work. I have yet to attend a good hybrid meeting where everybody had a good experience of it. I think either you're catering effectively to the people in the room and the folks in Zoom land are left out, or you're catering effectively to the people on Zoom and the folks in the room are having like a weird experience. I don't think that hybrid works. I strongly oppose it. I hate it on every level. Sorry, don't mean to be a bucket of negativity. I think you know me well enough that I'm actually not a negative person. And I feel very weird being this negative about it. But I think I would be remiss if I did not represent that hybrid does not work. and we should pick one. I think that hybrid seems to work better for the general meeting because there's enough critical mass in the room that there can be a good experience for folks who are listening. But to try and have a truly interactive conversation like this, it just doesn't work. And I really think that we should stop trying and we should appeal to our elected officials to change the open meetings law so that we can do one or the other. But trying to do both, everybody's unhappy.
All right, I got you. It was gonna be lightning round, but I do have some points. Let's go to Debbie, and then Daryl and Marielle already went, so we can put her hand down.
Jane.
Thanks, Kathy. So my meeting went fine. As people have remarked, the echo was really distressing people. And I have to say, it sounded like it was very difficult for the people on Zoom, but even like one or two of on our committee were struggling in the room because it is disconcerting to have the latency of the echo. But, you know, it wasn't like we had a stacked agenda to sort of build on where Liz was going. And I have said this to the Manhattan Borough president, and particularly from the TNT standpoint, that we don't get as many people in the room, although I see one of our sometime attendees, Ryan, there, and it's so great to see him. But to have the committees on Zoom and to have the general in person, I have found it thrilling to be in person for the general at the end of last year. But at least for me in particular, besides it didn't seem like it was a pleasant thing to be on Zoom for. For me, I really don't get numbers in the room outside the Zoom environment.
Okay. Thanks, Debbie. Jim, you want to go ahead?
Thank you. You may or may not know one of my backgrounds is computer science. The echo or latency, which someone properly called it, is inherent in the way it works. That if you lower the latency of the internet connections, it'll go down a little bit. But because all the voices end up on the same channel coming from Zoom, and that's basically going to be going through all sorts of processors, that's basically unavoidable. Now, I agree. And the other thing, and presumably you're hearing the same latency now, but I, as a person, attending remotely, am not hearing it. So from the remote people, they don't hear it, but I heard it, and it's very distracting and annoying. One thing I think we sort of figured out is if you make the volume of everybody else as low as possible but audible, the echo isn't quite as bad. The other piece of it, and I agree that it's not an ideal situation, but as someone pointed out, there are only two kinds of meetings available to us with the current open meetings law. And as someone pointed out, we could have, well, the two choices are hybrid and in-person only, but they can be broadcast, okay? But the second those are the only two choices at the moment because of the law. But as someone pointed out, we could change our rules so that, well, again, you can't have hybrid committee meetings. You can have, but you can't have virtual committee meetings, which is what people would like. You could have in-person committee meetings, but then, we would lose the outreach. But again, and I'm trying not to be overly repetitious, but the real choice at the moment, because of the law, which they may or may not change, is either hybrid or in-person with broadcasting. There are no virtual meetings allowed anymore because of the current law.
Jim, let me go to Steve real quick, just so I can make sure all the chairs from committees are able to speak on what their experience was.
Thank you.
And then I'll get to that point. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, my meeting was delayed a little bit while I tried to figure out how to log on and get the meeting going. I want to take exception with something that Marielle said. I am bound. I'm sure I'm less tax savvy than you are, so you're not the worst one in the meeting here. So it took me a while to get the meeting going, and once it got going, I don't remember the echo, and I think the meeting. My memory wasn't that long ago, is that the meeting went fairly well. I was surprised, I think, how well it did go. And, with most of my members in the room, and I think actually all of my members, except for one who was absent, they were all in the room. And by the way, Catherine, I want to say that I'm very happy with the new members who have been appointed to my committee. So I'm looking forward to working with all of them and now having a committee back at full strength. I would argue in favor of keeping the hybrid meetings.
Okay. Wayne, if you could share, I know you just hopped on. What worked, but didn't.
Right. There was an echo for the land use committee meeting. It was pronounced. We did manage to get a workaround. I think we were playing with the volume, although you have to be careful with that because at some point the folks who are attending virtually, which in case of land use was almost all of the attendees. I think we had one person in the room and 9 on video. They can't hear if you go down too low. What I find interesting is Paola mentioned that when they did a test of the hybrid, I think either earlier in the day or the day before, there was no echo at all. So my question is, how did they set it up prior so that they didn't have the echo? They mentioned something about the owl and the laptop not being as close to each other, and it was changed because they needed to capture, I guess the people sitting in the front of the room. But I wonder if we could play with, not during a meeting, but during some test meetings, different, configurations for the distance between the owl that the laptop's controlling to see if that helps to reduce the echo. I also participated in a couple of other committee meetings after land use. I think for each of them, there was an echo to some degree or the other. And in traffic and transportation, I could hear Debbie well, but it was difficult to hear other people in the room.
Okay, thank you. And then Daryl, I'm sorry I missed you earlier.
That's okay. Just a couple things. I was in the same meeting as Liz. I didn't have the same reaction. I mean, I thought it went actually fairly well, but also my expectations were incredibly low. But I mean, I think it went okay. I would say, I think maybe because it was my first time being in that room in however many years, that maybe it was harder for the public that was in the room to be as engaged versus the public that was on Zoom. So I don't know if there's a way maybe to kind of, I don't know if we need another camera, or I don't think the owl was working that day. So maybe the owl would capture the whole room. I'm not sure. And then also, and I really don't want to necessarily punish anyone, but I think if we're having city agencies and others present to us, that they could also be in person sometimes too. I don't want these presentations that we all have every month to all be virtual on their end and not on ours. So.
Thank you, Daryl, and actually everyone for the feedback. So it seems like
Catherine,
similar tech.
Can I just add one thing I just remembered?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
There was a problem that we had. One of my panelists said that she could not hear the people in the room who were speaking. That there was a problem with the volume that was being broadcast to the people who were on Zoom. So I don't know how that could be corrected.
Okay. Domingo, go ahead.
For me, the reason I like hybrid meetings is for the simple fact that, and it depends to the committee, right? If you're in the room and you prioritize being here, I really do believe you should be the priority when it comes to speaking. And then being able to engage with individuals who might have had a difficult time, still being able to provide them the option of being able to still be part of the meeting, even though for that particular moment, there was difficulties to be able to be in person, is also, options are always good. And that's what I feel. Being able to have an option to be able to engage and effectively plan with your committee, if there's an item that requires a vote, and make sure everybody's there, is always a good method of for me, what was interesting was being able to actually request more of the committee now. So being that we are hybrid, one of the things that we did was making sure that we had responsibilities, or individuals take up responsibilities of being able to take that computer, to be able to engage with questions, to be able to hold the stack up for individuals who raise their hand up online if there's an engaging conversation happening in person. But I think what hybrid does for us is it doesn't necessarily limit us to what could have been at that particular moment. And it gives us the ability to be able to engage with individuals who might have had difficulty transporting over to the meeting, but would still had the accessibility to be able to engage them, and they'd be able to participate. As far as city agencies, I think the expectation is, if we're expected to be in person for quorum, it's their job to be in person to be able to do a presentation. You know, we're volunteering, and it's difficult for us sometimes to take some time off to be able to do volunteer work. I think it's fair to raise that expectation, unless there's some difficulty or something happens last minute where they might have to result to the hybrid option and go virtual. But otherwise, they should be there in person. And the beauty of being able to do the hybrid is, as well, as we engage the community, being able to engage the community beyond broadcast and answer questions directly is valuable. You know, not everybody's going to feel that they have the time coming out from work. I just think the more accessibility we have, the better it is, and the better results we have engaging the community. It might be a bit difficult, but in life, if we don't sacrifice, there's no moving forward.
Thank you. Hold on. We're a little over time.
I was gonna say.
I wanna, and I know that we're opening, we could talk about this all night.
I hate to interrupt, but I really want to thank Wayne, because I think the owl, if it is too close to the speaker, where the sound is coming from, which is the laptop, it could actually create that very latency we're hearing. So I think that's a very well taken point. And I think,
thank you, Jim.
Because again, right now there is no, and I want to point out two things that apparently you're not screaming about the echoes, so they're not bad. And maybe the owl's not near the laptop. And the other thing is that the owl is working beautifully as people, I get a wide view at the top of the screen, and as people speak, it focuses on them. I'm very impressed. So
just to kind of recap a little bit on the conversation. I mean, we don't have a choice right now, right? It is either hybrid or 100% in person. And unless the board decides to swing that vote or chooses to propose a result for 100% in person, we're hybrid. At the same time, I want to reiterate, this is our first month of committee meetings being hybrid. So part of what the goal was is that every month we track and discuss and document what our experiences are like. So for example, is attendance going down? Is participation going down, or is it going up? I don't know. And that's not something that, it's not just us at CB12, but all of the other Manhattan boards are looking closely, and I'm in conversation with them. So, the same way that we piloted May and June, and I'm really glad we did, let's take this into mind of September to December, this quarter or the rest of this year, document what those experiences are, and we're able to come together at Borough Board and raise the issues with more data in hand, I think. And more of those experiences in hand. To Marielle's point, the guide, that's something that I had actually started. I'm gonna tap Chanel actually to help finish it, which is basically having that one sheeter with you, or not really one, it'll be like 4 pages, on the OWL and the Zoom controls. So that way anybody who's a Zoom facilitator in your meeting or who's gonna be working on the laptop can help with it then. And then I think the big thing, and I did not hear that so far now, is about communicating virtual. It does require more of chairs, right? Like who is coming in person, who is not. Right now, we don't have quorum in person. What does that mean? That there was no, if we had a resol, we wouldn't be able to vote on it. And so that planning, it takes time, right? And that means we need to plan more and make sure we don't have a resol that ends up being for naught. And that we can guarantee that in-person quorum. So that communication has to happen more, and that might mean that your assistant chair or another member on your committee is helping with that more. So I think to Domingo's point, where hybrid offers us that more collaborative opportunity because we need the help, right? Like one person can't do it all. Paola helps with the general meeting because there's no way I can text all 50 of y'all every single day, right? And the same thing with the FAQs. So we did every month in the newsletter, we have I put the link to the FAQs on what reasons you can or can't be, or who do you report to. If there are questions that are unanswered or clarification, that's a space for us to do that. We can print it and give it every single month if that's easier for folks. But we do have practice already in what are those rules. And then the last thing, sorry, and that goes to that, that's in the FAQ. Any speakers, city agencies, organizations, it's up to you guys. So if it's that you're asking, same thing with licensing, we're recommending for certain people to be here in person, or you're recommending them, hey, actually I have a full agenda, please stay remote, right? So you can make the request of the city agencies to come in person, or you can request for all of them to be in on Zoom. So that's really up to you and what that agenda looks like in that month, and what that agency has going on. So with that said, I want to, because I still see all these hands. What is pressing that y'all gotta say before we go?
I didn't mention, it's a lightning round, so I'm gonna be.
Oh, yeah.
So business development went well, similarly to Isidro and Domingo, and actually, Steve, a lot of echo, but certain settings brought it down. And like all things, it's just, you gotta get used to it. At first, I wasn't here. I was appointed during COVID, so I'm pretty sure that there was an adjustment period for Zoom. And similarly, there's gonna be an adjustment period for hybrid. So I'm excited for this. It went well. The owl was great. And I think that in 8 months from now, we'll be celebrating owl and this setup. So that's it.
All right, Jumina hasn't spoken, Mary, Liz, and we gotta keep going to the reports.
Yeah, I'll make it fast. I think the OWL is great technology. However, I feel that when these meetings first started, when we returned, we haven't learned how to use them to their best abilities. And it seemed like it was kind of improvised, which I think that's what affected the experience of everybody who joined. Because the reason why public safety survived that night was because we had to use an iPad, and the devices that we had to mute everything else and just work out of an iPad. So that was an extreme challenge, and it was tough because we had the present in person, as well as the folks from the Bodega organization trying to share information with the community. And in the comment sections, we had people saying, I can't hear anything, I can't hear anything. And it was like people were bashing the board because of the technology. And, that was pretty tough, and I'm not too sure how to go about that moving forward, but I think that if there's like a concrete structure on the technology, that would be helpful. And also, this could also affect the YouTube recording or the live streaming if we don't know which is the technology that is going to be recording, because if we mute a certain computer, that could affect the audio later for when, let's say, want to refer to it in the future. So I think once we get the technology, a little bit more efficient, then it'll run smoothly, because this really does make it accessible for people. And then chairs, if we need a quorum, that's something, we communicate with our teams so that we know, okay, this is the day we have to sacrifice to come in person, make quorum, and then we all go about it. That's just me.
All right, Mary, Liz, and then I don't see hands on Zoom.
I just wanted to say, in terms of the hybrid meetings, if it wasn't for the fact that people could come on hybrid and, on Zoom, for these meetings, I would have no attendees. I would only have the committee, maybe. There are only 3 of us here, actually 4, and the 4th one came. But, yeah, because people are working and, there's no parking here. I mean, people are from all over that, attend our meeting. And, that's what happened when we went Zoom, actually, is that my attendance blossomed because people were able to come in on Zoom.
Yeah.
So,
Liz, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so, as much as I hate hybrid meetings, I am not in any way suggesting that we go all in person. If those are the only 2 options available to us, then obviously, I stand by the resolution that we passed. But I would like to see strong advocacy with the legislature for a change in the legislation, because I think that, to Debbie's point, we have this room. We have this room. And this room is fine. I am not uncomfortable in this room. But, Domingo was having meetings where there were 150 people. We can't fit 150 people in this room. And we don't have the ability to be downstairs on the 2nd floor. I had meetings where I had 120 people, 80 people. We can fit comfortably 30 people in this room. And for those committees that had a lot of people, that's incredibly effective community engagement. So I would love to be able to, for that reason, still have Zoom meetings and to be able to appeal to the state legislature to change the open meetings law, that we have this technology that provides better engagement. To Domingo's point, yes, we are volunteers and we should demand that people who are paid to give presentations show up. And yet, one of the things that's been great about virtual meetings is when I've got a consultant who lives on Staten Island, a consultant who lives in Westchester, a consultant who lives in Southern Manhattan, and they're each doing 3 different presentations for Parks and Cultural Affairs on 3 different projects, being able to present on Zoom and say to them, this is about when you'll be there. I'm going to shoot you a text when you're 15 minutes out. This has made a huge difference in being able to get the best quality presenters, being able to get commissioners of agencies, all kinds of people. You can get a council member, a commissioner to show up for 15 minutes in a Zoom in a way. They're not coming up here. They ain't got that kind of time. So, I think that we really added something when we were able to draw in that virtual presentation that I don't know about the rest of y'all's committee, but it dramatically enhanced the quality of presentations and work that we were able to do. And I'm sorry, Luana, but I'm really glad that this is no longer my problem, because this is an absolute shit show that I'm really happy that I get to walk away from it. And I'm really sorry that she's stuck with it.
Well, Liz, I'm sorry. Today was an interesting meeting too, because we just started going and
I'm sorry, did I bury the lead there?
Well, we're gonna shift to committee reports, so maybe that's the start. So,
I do agree with you.
sorry, if you don't mind, Joel, we'll just kick it off with Liz's news.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, so,
Hello, Liz.
hey, so the short version is my son quit his job and went back to school to get an MBA. He got a free ride at Stern, and the best way to afford going to graduate school when you do not have a job and you have a new wife is you move into your parents' apartments and your parents decide to travel a lot. So I feel like I can still be a part of the board and I can participate because fortunately I have diabetes, which qualifies as an underlying disability. So I can participate virtually and count for quorum when I'm not in the country. And I feel like I can still participate fully as a board member, but that it would be irresponsible for me to try to chair a committee So the very excellent Luana Ferreira, who is a relatively new board member and a member of the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee, has agreed to chair. I think she's going to be great. She's a lifelong resident of the community, a passionate advocate for parks and for recreation, public safety, and the arts. So I think she's going to do great. Alexis Marnell, who was a public member, is now a full board member, and she is the assistant chair for Parks and Cultural Affairs. So I feel like this committee is in really good hands. And after 25 years of being an active member of the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee and chairing it or assistant chairing it for most of that quarter century, I was very weird for last week to be my last meeting. But there we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Parks are much better.
Sure.
Seen a lot of nice parks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, for real.
Appreciate that. One update in terms of the actual work of the committee, or two updates, is that the Bonifant, which is the concessionaire for the restaurant in what had been the New Leaf, it's not clear exactly when they're going to open. They were talking maybe October 8th, October 12th. It's looking like this fall. They had a lot of issues with gas, with electric, with all kinds of things. Heads up for the Public Safety Committee. They've got all kinds of, because it's been closed, I think it'll be better once they open, but they've had all kinds of just really difficult public safety problems with people kind of vandalizing the exterior, sleeping there, defecating there. It's been a little bit of a mess, literally. But they're working with the precinct and with the Parks Department, and I'm hoping that that's going to be opening soon. And when it does, I'm confident it's going to be a terrific addition to the parks. And in terms of the Dykeman Marina, the Dykeman Marina is going to be, no, that's not what I wanted to report on. What I wanted to report on is EDC and the two new parks at the North Cove and Academy Street. They were originally going to come back to the committee in June to give preliminary plans and schematics. They have put that on a brief pause while they have the consultants do a little bit more work on resiliency. Surprise, global warming, rising sea levels. You're talking about two parks that are at the water. So EDC really wanted to make sure that QRP, the consultants, had really fully considered taking all of that into account in their planning. So they will be coming back with schematics and a preliminary plan in January. So if anybody is coming to you and saying, oh, gee, I'm concerned that this isn't in the plan and it needs to be changed, there's no plan yet. We haven't seen the preliminary plan. We'll see the preliminary plan in January. Hopefully it will have many of the things that we want. It's impossible to make everybody happy. It's probably not going to have everything that we want, but we're going to advocate to make sure that we get, you know, the kinds of things that we want and that they're integrated seamlessly into the existing properties that are there or being developed on 207 and on Academy.
Any questions, comments for Parks and for Liz?
Liz, I have a question. What was that location you mentioned about public safety concern?
It's the Bonifant, which is the restaurant concession in Fort Tryon Park that used to be the New Leaf Cafe. And they've been closed for a couple of years, and the public restroom has been open, maintained by Parks Department, which is great. But, you know, when things are closed, it just kind of gets weird.
Yeah.
And when they open up, it tends to get better, but it's been less than great. And there are some challenges for this business, and yeah, it's hard for them.
Thank you, Liz. All right, I guess we're gonna go to Joel.
All right, great. Liz, I try to stop by in August, hoping it's open. It's closed.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to that, Liz. So the Business Development Committee is extremely excited for this week. Friday is the Land Night Market. I'm glad it was changed, Liz.
Yes.
From 15th to the 22nd. Happy Rosh Hashanah
Rosh Hashanah.
to you.
Thank you.
So it's gonna be great. We're looking for volunteers, 2 more volunteers to help with the event. Marcos and Beatrice are really excited. I think this is gonna be great. Great test run. We spoke about it a lot in June, so here we go. I'm looking forward to it. We spoke about that. We also had a presentation by Perscolas. If anybody's looking to switch careers, get into cybersecurity, information systems, software engineering, Perscolas is a great program. It's free. It's an application process. I encourage you to look at the meeting minutes and also the recording. And if anybody wants to pitch that, it's a great opportunity. It's an extensive 18-week, 16-week process, depending on what concentration you do. So definitely recommend anybody who's trying to switch careers and get into tech to check them out. They had a great presentation during our meeting. We also spoke about outdoor dining. This is a hot topic this summer. So August, I think it was 16th, Mayor Adams signed into law permanently installing outdoor dining with some restrictions or adaptations that is going to make it feasible. Exact regulations are not going to be available until mid to late November. We're actually having the hospitality group come in. Hospitality group has a attorney that works with them that was involved in the legislation. And they're going to come in on November, and I'll let licensing know to invite all the businesses to come in and get aware, get oriented on what exactly is happening, because DOT is working on the regulations. There are a few things that we went over in the meeting that they did come out with. Keep in mind that these not so permanent structures, they have until November of next year to kind of adapt to the new regulations. So keep that day open, November, for any businesses that want to learn about outdoor dining. It's going to be November's business development meeting. What else? We also touch upon, I know this is kind of cannabis, but we talked about the card licenses that were issued. I think it was like 200 during the summer. 200 new card licenses were given, and I know they're halted right now because of some lawsuit.
Litigation.
Yeah, some litigation that includes veterans. So, but yeah, everything else, please refer to the minutes. Thank you.
All right, Wayne has a question. Let me do Domingo, then Wayne, and then Wayne, you could do your report.
Okay.
50-50, not yet. Did they speak about it? Because I know Isidro's here too. And Isidro.
Do we know the number?
Yeah, it's 60-40 right now.
60-40.
And is it possible if it's good that it goes 50-50?
The future, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
fish.
No,
for
that's
sure.
I don't need.
For
Yeah.
sure. I think this is like we mentioned in June. This is like a test run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's either, so it's gonna be something that for the series of events happening next year, if this goes well, I think it could be 50.
Yeah.
And it's either you could jump.
Yeah.
And the reason I said that Isidro was because if you know about the Harlem night market and a lot of our businesses actually participate down there and in the Brooklyn night market as well. So
yeah, they gave us like fee waivers for us to give it out to some businesses. I connected with at least maybe 6 of them. Only one wanted to be part of this. And I guess it's like the lack of information.
Yeah.
They don't have the proper idea as to how big this might be.
Mhm.
Once they see it, I bet you that next
Yes.
year, everyone to be part of this. Also, to the fact, because of the geographic of this location, take into account that you do have restaurants on the board. Some of them say, I'm already there. I'm not going to pay the fee.
Right.
So I guess it's a wait and see. But we'll definitely be advocating for more offices to be part of it.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Isidro, I think that there's a lot of hesitancy, even business that I spoke to. Hey, listen, I'm on the board. I know this organization. Here's the process. We're even hesitant. So I think that is a wait and see to the success, because it's going to be a success to the event, and then they're going to jump on board.
There's something I don't understand about the 50-50 thing though, because like on the one hand, the thing that's beautiful about this event is it brings, it's an incredible opportunity for patrons, for local businesses to have a captive audience of thousands of patrons. So making sure that there's an opportunity for local businesses to participate is great. On the other hand, it's also a tremendous opportunity for people in the neighborhood to have the food come here. As a resident of this neighborhood, I already eat at the local restaurants. I want all of these restaurants from Staten Island and Brooklyn and the Bronx and Queens and downtown Manhattan to come to my neighborhood and serve me and my neighbors. So I think that there's a real advantage. Yes, we want to make space for the economic development of our local businesses, but we also want to allow people who live in this community for all of those times when we say, hey, how come we don't have this here in Inwood?
Right.
How come we don't have this here in Washington Heights? When we have a promoter bringing all of these things that we don't have here, it seems a little weird that we're all like, wait a second, don't bring all those outsiders in here that we've been bitching about not coming here.
Yeah,
It's gotta be all for us, by us. Like, what is that?
So I got a rebuttal to that because that was.
But wait,
Uh,
Emily's
Yeah.
Wayne's been waiting.
So I think what's important to note though is while it does sound great in a universe of equity and beautiful, but a lot of the people in this community actually don't engage in a lot of the businesses here. So the assumption that they are going to local restaurants because you go is actually a pretty flawed debate. So unfortunately, while I hear that, I think it lacks the reality that a lot of the businesses here are actually facing. So while making it 50-50 will make it much more equitable, I think as we bring in new businesses, a space like this would actually incentivize a lot of individuals who are not frequenting a lot of these local locations to actually go, because for them, that might be a much more comfortable zone as they pursue new restaurants. They're actually realizing that a lot of great restaurants are within our community and they're actually welcome to participate and patron it. So while I hear what you're saying around how you experience, about your experience, I feel like that's not the experience of everybody in this community. And while it does seem to the interest of bringing the whole world to be able to taste it in Dykeman. The reality is that we need people to actually come to the businesses that are already here while also experiencing something new. So 50-50 is something pretty reasonable.
Hold on, just because Wayne.
So change of topic, but going back to Joelle, your comment about Perscolis.
Yes.
I agree. I mean, Perscolis is an excellent program. One of the things mentioned during that presentation is Perscolis had a partnership with UMES for about a year, which ended in July. And UMES was providing funding for them to recruit and train 65, attendees in Upper Manhattan. And they only were able to attract 50. And I got to tell you that I know that we should be able to attract 65 people who are interested in getting training for jobs in tech. And tech really does need to address the shortfall of people of color there. So CB12 needs to, in my opinion, close the loop with Perscolis and see what we can do to help them in their ongoing efforts, because they said they were going to continue to, work on programs. But I think it's ridiculous that you have an organization with another organization providing them funds to find 65 people, and Upper Manhattan has a population of over 200,000. They were only able to get 50.
50, yeah, I agree, Wayne. Yeah, so UMass funded the concentration on this area, right? That's why they were giving funding to attract these people. And yes, Wayne, 50. I think that while during the meeting, we connected with another board member. She was not on the committee, but she has a pool of people that she can pitch this to.
What's the target age group?
No, there's no age limit. It's anybody.
No,
Also-
there's no,
Security.
you have
So,
to,
Joe,
Let,
so I was gonna say, Joel, can you send that to the office, whatever they shared, so
Mhm.
that we could blast it? And
yes.
then also, like, that has intersections with youth and education, housing, human services, so like all board members can put the word out. And part of what we're approving, I think, too, similar that we did with night market, right, is that when we have these opportunities where we know that 15 people, 15 businesses, we could do that work, and we have people willing to do that work, then let's try to close those gaps, right? So whether that's that, like, you know, there's on human services, like, for example, I'm in conversation with NIMIC. NIMIC does all of the DYCD, they do all of these training programs for young people who do want to go into the career path, and that's a huge pool already.
Yeah.
So like, those are folks that we can link them directly with, but we just need to kind of coordinate that amongst ourselves.
okay, I'll be sure to send out the PowerPoint presentation, because 15 people I think we can do. And just to quickly mention, piggyback on what Liz was saying, I think an unrepresented point and advantage to having the Latin night market here is that business owners are gonna come to Washington Heights and Inwood, and they're gonna look out for commercial spaces, right? And say, maybe I can expand here, maybe I can scale up here, right? So that's another point, which is good. I do like 50-50 anyway, but that's just something that also appeals to new businesses coming up here.
So Friday, we all in there, right?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, Wayne, your turn.
Yeah,
You go.
so, like Steve, I too would, like to thank you for the new land use committee, members. We have Heidi Guzman and we have, Tracy McNeil, and Tracy's father, Gary McNeil, is a resident of Washington Heights, and he's one of the few, and I do mean few, African-American, professors that the City College School of Architecture has ever had. So, in June,
And he's a former member of the City Planning Commission.
exactly.
Hey, the big deals are heavy.
So, in the June Land Use Committee meeting, the Historic Districts Council met with us to talk about how they can work with us to help, promote the board and the community's interest in historic preservation. And so over the summer, they put together a, short survey in English and Spanish, and the intention is to share that with residents of the community to get their input on buildings and places they would like to see recognized. The Land Use Committee, made some suggestions for edits, and the next step was to talk about how to get it out. So in addition to CB12 playing an active role in e-blasting it, we were also talking about, how we can have a low-tech or a no-tech version. I mean, using our libraries and schools to get hard copies out there for folks who may not be, or tech savvy, or may not be comfortable doing the survey online, as well as to, just to make sure that our networks, the same as we were talking with Prisco's, our networks know what's going on, and that we are out asking them for their assistance in getting the word out to residents that there's this survey. And although we've talked about it internally, we want to know more about what people want to see in terms of designated buildings and places. There were 2 resolutions that we passed and will be presented at the general meeting. We had a presentation by DDC on the Fort Washington Armory, which is not a landmark, but it is a National Register listed building since 1995. The roof of the building leaks, as Jim Berlin pointed out. There was a prior repair project on the sort of glass enclosed portion of that. So that's not leaking, but the flat roof is leaking, and some of the parapet walls are damaged because of that. So this project will put down new roofing. It will actually add safety rails so they're complying with the building department. And the parapet walls which are damaged will be repaired, and the exterior walls repointed, and the interior rooms which have experienced water damage will then be fixed. And so we passed a resolution supporting that capital project. Just as a point of information, one of the questions that came up during the meeting is, if there was a requirement for this project to go before SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, since it is a National Register building and they did not have an answer at the time. I coordinated with HDC, and with National Register buildings, if there is state money or federal money that's being used, then it has to go before SHPO. In this case, it's just city capital. So that is not considered a state action. So it does not have to go before SHPO for review. The second resolution pertains to the borough president's housing plan. We've talked about that plan, which was released at the end of January at every land use committee meeting, except I believe for June. And we are supposed to be coordinating with Housing and Human Services to work together to explore it in more detail. We passed a resolution with some initial recommendations for planning guidelines or principles that should govern any new housing development in Washington Heights and Inwood, so that those projects address the housing need here, issues of affordability and unit distribution, unit size. So, that is intended to provide a framework to shape future developments while we continue to look in more detail at the plan and at, recommending additional sites. We also started a discussion of the capital and expense budget priorities, which we will continue and finalize at the October meeting.
Wayne, who's leading that survey that you discussed?
It was drafted by the Historic Districts Council, but it's really up to Community Board 12 to get the word out.
Okay, I'll connect with you about that because that could be a project for the graduate intern I had shared, if that's something, because we had to propose 2 projects, so that seems like one that could fit.
That would be good. That would be good. Because as you said, we're talking about using our website and e-blast as one means, but even for board members, not everyone is comfortable or prefer to do things on the website. So having the ability to get hard copies out, to coordinate with libraries and community-based organizations to get hard copies of those surveys to them is something that we really need to address.
Thank you. Any other questions, Wayne? All right, so that seems pretty straightforward. Next up we have Mary.
I'm just gonna throw this out just because I keep forgetting to call you or email you or whatever. Miriam James, again,
Okay,
was a no-show.
okay.
Oh, I have some,
It's been going on.
I have
for
some
months and
information.
months.
Okay, we'll talk about that offline though.
I have some personal
anything?
information to share with you.
Our meeting, as I said, slow getting started with all the technical issues we had, but we got it going. And we didn't have, we did reach quorum. We talked quite a bit about, how this is gonna run the hybrid meetings and, the need to be in person for the committee members and the difficulty that the committee members have getting here in person with their various and sundry jobs that they have to leave in the fact that there's no parking and that it takes a long time by public transportation to get here for many of them. So there'll be ongoing discussion about the timing of our meeting. We may or may not decide to change it. Don't know yet. But we've got to really think deep and hard about this, because all of our, I would say, 99% of our attendees are also working people that Zoom in from their jobs. Yes. No.
With me not being on this committee
I
anymore.
have you there. I have you.
And good news, I have a disability waiver, so. And good news, I can easily attend your 10:00 a.m. meeting from any time zone.
10:30.
Whatever.
I have you on because of the.
Gotcha. Anyway, so we had, discussion about the timing of our meeting and the difficulties of, being in person. Also, the continuous issues that we have about outreach to the seniors in the community. And, the difficulty we have with that, and part of that, is because before COVID, we were going to the senior centers different one each month and having our meetings there, which helped us to at least get, some of, the seniors from that area involved in our meetings and what's going on and discuss with them and, the issues they were having, et cetera, et cetera. It's been difficult to get the seniors to attend the meetings because in the community, either they're at the senior center, they have activities going on. So, we're again talking about that and how to handle that. We talked about a budget request. Sorry, the capital expense budget. We had preliminary discussion about that.
You want some water? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I have asthma, so I want to keep talking. And our next meeting, we are having a presentation on COVID updates. Because that's a hot topic these days, what's happening with COVID and, the new strains that keep coming out and whether people should keep getting immunizations or not, or why, and, what kind and the timing of it and all that, particularly among the Asian population. So we have someone coming from New York Presbyterian, Stephen Chang, to do that presentation, and that will be on October 5th.
Okay, I know Stephen.
So,
All right, excellent.
and hopefully, hopefully we'll spread the word and try to get more people from the community.
Yeah, we'll
Tune into that meeting. There's,
that's let me see if we can get like a quick flyer for that done
Okay.
and blast it out.
Okay.
If this was Stephen.
yeah, that would be great because then I can send it to the senior centers too. Maybe they can,
Yeah.
make space
Okay.
in their programming.
That's actually a good segue over to Steve. Steve, you around still?
Yeah, actually,
You
actually,
need a minute?
actually, that's an excellent segue.
Right.
Because
It's
COVID,
almost like they planned it.
We did,
well,
sort of.
I wish I could say that we did, but it's COVID is Mary is right. It's a hot topic. It was a prime topic for our meeting. At the point at which we met, there had been rising rates of COVID throughout the city. One of our zip code 40, had the 6th highest hospitalization rate among all the zip codes in the city. It was number 6 within the city. 34. It doesn't sound like a lot, but 34 out of 100,000 population had been hospitalized during the previous week because of COVID. At New York Presbyterian, I guess, and elsewhere. So it's a serious issue. And at this point, a new vaccine is available. I'm not sure how widely available it is. I've contacted the health department to ask whether or not there's a flyer that we could distribute, letting people know where they can get the new vaccine and encouraging them to do so. And that's something I would like to see the board participate in, or certainly send out some information about this vaccine and where people can go. Unfortunately, New York Presbyterian is not going to be providing this new vaccine to the general community outside of its own patient base, except there will be one event in Washington Heights at the Hebrew Tabernacle on October the 10th, and I believe there's another one up in Riverdale. But despite my pleas, they are not reopening Morgan Stanley and providing the vaccine to anyone in the community who might wish to obtain it. There also, unfortunately, is no news on when the hospital plans to reinstate the 30 psych beds that were closed at the Allen Hospital. All they're saying at this point is that they will be restored, but they will not tell us when or where. So that's still a big question mark. And I've made various inquiries to try to obtain this, see what the heck is going on between the state and the hospital. So there are apparently some negotiations going on, which we're not privy to, and we don't know what it is that they're negotiating about. Which is so we're in the dark right now as to when this important service will once again become available in our community. That's my report.
All right, thank you, Steve. Next up is Marielle.
I'm sorry, but I now have to switch to another community board meeting. Are we going to be voting on the bylaws amendments?
No, so that's just the, correct me if I'm wrong, Daryl, but it's basically, this is the first time it went out and it's for next month.
Oh, good, because
That way we have at least a month to review.
Oh, good, because I still have some suggestions I want to make. Okay, I'll see you all as soon as I can. Take care.
All right, bye, Steve. All right, Marielle.
Thank you, Catherine. And apologies, colleagues. Unable to join in person tonight due to work. Hope you're all well. So we had our Housing and Human Services meeting. I already kind of gave you some feedback on how I think the meeting went. So really looking forward to, as you suggested, Catherine, kind of over the next couple of months, continuing to track it. And, hopefully there are ways to kind of increase engagement in this new hybrid format. In regards to what we discussed, we spent a good portion of the meeting, one, of course, welcoming our new members, which we're very excited to have them and have their input, but also spending some time talking about the budget priorities process and kind of identifying bits and pieces. I think one exercise that we found quite helpful was to, of course, look at what was submitted last year and look at and kind of rank it and kind of see what the comments were from the different agencies. So that's kind of a homework, so to speak, for all of us as a committee to take a look at that and come well informed for our meeting in October to kind of agree or at least vote on a ranking that will, of course, then be submitted to the wider board for discussion and voting. We also spent some time talking about the migrant crisis. In particular, we obviously, I think, we've all seen the news, we see what's going on. I think for us as a committee, we're quite interested in learning a little bit more about how it's impacting us directly. And we know it is. And so it's kind of, an exercise of reaching out to elected officials, but also, community organizations that are involved, shelters and so on that are involved in the migrant crisis. As an aside, which I did share with the committee, I'll actually be taking part in a workshop later this week, going to the border and doing some work on the migrant crisis for a couple of days. And so hoping to kind of get some learnings from people down on the border and kind of other cities across the country that are also experiencing this and doing a lot of work on this. So hoping to kind of bring a little bit of what they're doing and kind of see what we can learn and adapt from what they're doing and so on. I think that's about it. Obviously, I know, Wayne, you talked about the initiative that we had first started working on. And so that's also something that we'll need to follow up on. And there's kind of other bits and pieces that we'd like to move forward on as well throughout the next couple of months. So look forward to watching the recording and the minutes when available. Thank you.
Liz has a question for you, followed by Michelle.
Yeah, Maya, you're leaving for a conference that's happening tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday?
No, not so what? No, not tomorrow. So I'm going to it's a workshop for a group that I'm a part of, and it'll be later this week for a couple of days at the border.
No, so if it's okay, do you mind if I share your number with Julia Attaway, who's the executive director of the Cabrini Shrine? She's going also to, I don't know if it's the same workshop or different workshop at the border focused on migrant situations. So seems like
Please.
there are multiple people from this community looking, whether it's the same workshop or different workshops, you're going to be bringing stuff back here and maybe you should be talking to each other.
For sure. And thank you, Liz. And that's not just a request from you, but also others. I think one of the challenges that I've had, and it's been a little bit challenging, is kind of really strengthen or kind of build relationships with a lot of the community partners. And so for those of you who may have those close relationships, really helpful to kind of loop in. I know, for instance, the congressman, I know that he had a press conference, I think it was just on Friday, with other members of Congress at the Roosevelt Hotel regarding the migrant crisis. So also kind of looping into relevant organizations, but also electeds that are quite focused on this issue. So thank you, Liz.
You bet.
And then Michelle, but also I was gonna say, if the committee came up with the list of orgs and they just look for folks, like if you could send that to me, Ebenezer Paola, because obviously, the staff has contact at all of these, and I do, and so do other chairs. So we can kind of just pull that together. Michelle, go ahead.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, my comment, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
My comment is just that I'm still interested in doing a visit to one of BRC's shelters. So if you guys remember, at the end of last year, they came to present, and we had a resolution to support them building a new men's only shelter in Inwood. And so they've been really open about wanting to have us over to just kind of see what it looks like. And so I'm very interested in setting that up. So if anybody else would like to participate as I start scheduling this, please just send me an email, let me know.
Thank you, Michelle. Helpful reminder. Yes, it's open to all, not just the committee members.
Okay, well, we can put it in the next call, see who else might be interested, and then we'll email Leslie. We gotta keep going, but yeah.
Very quick. Marielle, I'm also want to send you information reminding you to possibly share with your committee and your contacts about the Uptown Wagon Free Store, which is happening on this Friday at the Armory.
Yes, thank you. And I saw that, and I said I would have loved to participate, but I'll be away. But yes, please do share that along. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Debbie, you're up next.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, okay. So the main thing on the agenda that we had at the meeting was the MTA came just to sort of present. There've been a lot of projects, some smaller, some bigger, and just to kind of go through where everything was at. Over the summer, the Dykeman 1 train became fully accessible, but with the addition of the elevator on the side where it wasn't. And finally, the stairwell that had been closed with the Dykeman A stop open, the one that's sort of south of Dykeman and Riverside. But at the same time, there were delays at the 181st Street ADA project on the A train. And for people who access that station or the flyover in the station from Overlook, they've been really, upset about the delay in those doors opening. And unfortunately, it is a story that we've come across before where there were some structural issues discovered and leaks. And so basically they cannot open the door, even though the ramp is done from Overlook, until the leak is remediated enough that they can get kind of some, like basically have it sort of be half open from that, open enough that people could get in. But anyway, so they gave us what information they had, which is still not a lot about when they'll be able to open the door, but they also talked to us a little bit about Omni. Mary had MTA come and present on that, but we actually hadn't to aging, but we hadn't had them talk to us about that at TNT. I will say and then I just wanted to sort of close the loop on just some items that had come up. Remember there was that like one article about air quality at all the subway stations, but it like appeared in one place and it wasn't clear like what it meant. But they were able to explain that air quality is checked regularly because of OSHA regulations for the worker side of it. So the air quality is always monitored, under the whatever the regulations go to air quality in the workplace with OSHA, and that so obviously there's a system in place if there is anything of danger or irregular, which has not been the case there. So, and then they talked to us a little bit about just what sort of customer service in stations, what's the vision for what that looks like? Because the position that
That's your
was
time.
always traditionally sorry.
No, with your clock,
time.
your alarm rang, so if you got like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
before you go.
so whatever, I'll cover that at another time. Sorry to be rambling.
Okay,
And
it's
then, we talked about the capital budget stuff. I mean, we'll have more of that conversation in October, but we sort of started the conversation.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna go to
Question, yeah. David, maybe I didn't hear well. Did the NTA provide you with a definite answer as to when they're going to open up the subway station, the entrance at Overlook on the A train? Because they've been closed for the longest. And maybe I didn't hear you right, but did they give you an update?
No, again, they didn't. I think we're going to know soon, but what the plan that they've set out once they realized they weren't going to get it open on August 31st, which, was bad on them. They waited till the 31st when it wasn't opening to sort of say it's not going to end up open.
Okay.
So they're just trying to control the lake enough that they can open the door and then set up temporary scaffolding, because it is going to be a long-term structural repair. Like what was discovered was structural. But so they will mobilize something so that it can be open, but we don't know yet when they're going to have that sort of temporary long-term fix in so they can open the door. The ramp has been done for weeks. So as soon as, I know something, I'll get the information circulated, but they have not released information. And then what's made, I think, matters worse, as if it wasn't, it was really bad that they didn't make it open by the start of school, which was really the red line. But they just then to not have any information has been particularly painful to people. So hopefully we'll have something soon. And I've just sort of pleaded that it does kind of seem like we had this at 190th as well, although wasn't sort of impacting travel in quite the same way. But it's like, these are old facilities, and this is the second time. It's like, oh, the doorway, the leak, the this, the that, we can't open the door. It's pretty crazy. One thing
we'll also make sure that Ebenezer adds it whenever MCA does go to district service, so that we get some more updates there too.
And as far as the study made on the 181 and 168th Street on the Morgan train, we are not going to rest. We're not going to rest. I'm thinking of doing an independent study on those subway stations, because I cannot trust what the NTA is telling us, our community, that there's no pollution there. But that will come later.
Elia's not here, so I guess we can just go to licensing.
Okay, so during the break,
Thank you, Debbie.
I had a huge meeting with a new chair for SLA. chairwoman, Fan. And I spoke about the impact of how we communicate with SLA and what kind of weight our resolution carries. And to my surprise, she is a person that comes from the community board in the Lower East Side.
Really?
So it's a great advantage for us to put our recommendations. And she said that will have a tremendous effect on how they address specific resolutions and applications. It was really nice. The great thing that I like about her is that she's also said that she's going to do like an education aspect as to how applicants should serve alcohol. And I said, like, you should start at the community board because that's where everything starts. And she can agree. She said, like, we're definitely going to recommend that we start with the community board in informing members how the law applies to serving alcohol. So I said, like, welcome to CB12, whatever we can do, feel free to reach out. As far as our meeting is concerned, great meeting. Besides the echo, didn't bother me at all, but I just brought it to attention. Happy that Simari is stepping up as the vice chair for the license committee. Great help. Thank you so much. We had 40 applications and we had to be out of here by 10. We finished up by, I think, 9:31. So finish up on time. I'm grateful to the committee members for giving me the flexibility to chair and move the agenda forward. We had about 13 withdrawals, mostly because they were not ready, the application was not complete, and so on. We did not recommend about 5 of them. And again, that's because there were issues with applications, but I'm working on the resolutions. Anthony's stepping up, by the way. Anthony Viola is stepping up big time. He's finished up the minutes already. So I'm trying to catch up and compete with him. So I guess that everything will be ready before Friday.
Okay.
And that's just my report.
Liz,
So 2 things. One, it's great to hear that the incoming SLA chair has, roots in this perspective, because it's incredibly frustrating. I know, like, you do your serious business, people come from the community, they say what they have to say. You recommend that something not get approved, the board goes with that, and then the SLA is like, yeah, whatever, they paid their application, nobody's got a history of axe murdering, so we're gonna give them the license, and we're like, huh. So that's good news. But the question that I have, sort of apropos of one of the highly problematic items at your last meeting, but as an ongoing thing, why is it that an applicant they apply, they get rejected, and then 6 months later, they come back, and it's like they're playing a game of attrition. We're volunteers. Committee members are volunteers. Community members are just trying to go about their lives. And sometimes you have these businesses and they just keep on coming back and coming back and coming back. And eventually, like, people get tired, they miss a meeting, they couldn't go to, like, what is that?
So it's nothing that we can do as community board. They have the right to apply. However, the way that I'm addressing this type of applicants that do have a rough engagement with the community is to highlight like the history, the background as to how they were voted on the last resolution, followed by this resolution. So there could be a track record to see that there are issues with that particular applicant.
So is there the potential, and I don't want to have this be like a big discussion, but is there, I mean, I don't want to sound anti-business. I vote for many, many, many licenses, but is there the potential for us as a board to advocate with our state elected officials to change the way the law is written so that, if you come and you are rejected, that you don't get to keep on coming back every month, every other month, every 3 months, or
I would not agree with that, because sometimes we reject an applicant based on that they didn't bring the proper documents. Sometimes they are misled even by the representative.
Sure.
So there are issues that should be exempted.
That, no,
But there's a few
I agree, but it just seems like it's not fair for businesses to just say, look, I sunk a lot of money in this. I don't really care what the community thinks. And that, and it doesn't happen a lot, but over the last 30 years, there have been a small handful of operators who consistently get rejected and they like wear the community down, and it just seems not fair.
To your point, Isidro, I think that during the committee meetings, I've seen applicants come in, get rejected because of XY reasons, go back and fix it.
Yeah,
And then.
that's
no,
not
they
what I'm
remediate.
talking about.
But then also, I think that specifically this one, we gave them an opportunity, this, and this is what really is frustrating. We gave them an opportunity to get just a beer and wine, right? And they explicitly negated that and went ahead and served alcohol. So that I think is what to your point is, if they explicitly violate their
That right there.
that right there, I think should be something that we can talk about.
I'm not talking about the guy like, we didn't get the thing, and I don't wanna,
Yeah, I think, just to Domingo.
Yeah, so my concern is, so I got the kids of one of the establishment owners, and he was talking to me about it just came up randomly. We also have to be very cautious about the individuals that say they live in certain places and complain about the noise when in reality they don't live there. Right. So for instance, we had the guy from I believe Legacy. He came and spoke to me about an individual that lived above him that was making complaints about about the noise complaints. And then he checks in with the landlord to talk to the individual and be like, hey, look, whatever we could do to mitigate this, let us know. Then he goes and the person doesn't live there. So I think we have to.
I'm 100% with you, but I mean, I'm talking about like just for the specific thing that you're describing.
I hear you, but I'm not talking about that. So I think the most important thing for me, I'm asking him a question, adding to your question. We also have the committee, just a recommendation, has to be cautious also with individuals who weaponize these noise complaints to really target particular individuals, because I'm assuming, right, that it's not a coincidence that they go after certain individuals and not others. And so just something to think about.
And on that note, it's hard to tell who's telling the truth. And oftentimes we do have really bad actors, like the one that we just mentioned. These are going to be highlighted. We're going to write a strong resolution, because now we believe that what we write on the resolution will have some weight. I gotta be careful, because again, I saw one business that was shut down, and it was unfortunate because it was a couple of residents that decided that this was not good restaurant. And when we checked the essence on how the business was run, there was nothing wrong.
And I just to piggyback on what you said with the Jordan and Legacy, I did offer his representative to the Office of Nightlife has a great mediation program between residents and business owners. So I'm pretty sure if he goes through the process and there's a mediation process and the person doesn't live there, then we know what's up. Right? So
I was gonna say that because we do gotta move on. Is that it's tough because that exists in everything, right? There are gonna be, it could be the same competitors, right? Competitors reporting and making false accusations. So, and it's as a volunteer body, is like where do we end? And I know you've lived through many issues of that. But I think that the Office of Nightlife, the fact that they're growing in those services and that is a resource that that is a mediator, that's really where we should be pointing both neighbors and the businesses too, right? Because it's like, if there is something that comes out of it, great. If something like that pops out that actually it's all false, or there's bigger than that, then we at least have something that we can kind of go to,
Yeah, let me just say something on that. Because this has gone in different ways. We have businesses that are competing against one another, right?
Yeah.
And I've been hearing the fact that some businesses actually pay people to go to a place just to instigate violence. And there have been instances where businesses that have been very successful with the sidewalk affair, they have been thrown human feces so that the business can be destroyed. I mean, it's really tragic and it's really sad. That's what we have. That's what we have.
We're dealing with money.
Yeah, because it's tough to speculate, you know, unless people have evidence. But in that situation, being that there is, I think it's very important to know, like individuals being targeted and use that as an example of like, hey, look, even when you try to do things the right way, you have situations like this where it's like, yeah, try to do it the right way, but this person doesn't even exist.
I think on a closing thought though, for that licensing, I think what I would recommend, like for the public record here, is that if you have patrons that like thoroughly support your business, are very happy and delighted, I think like send them the Zoom link. I think 1,000 people in the room, or the loudest person in the room, like with the complaints, I think can be echoed by the positives. So I think having them join on the call.
That's a good question, Maddie. All right, with that, we'll transition over to Domingo. Welcome back to exec, Domingo.
So the committee was good.
What are you chairing now?
Youth and education. I've chaired 3
Yes.
committees. Yeah, boom. It was good. We were able to delegate some tasks to make the meetings run more efficiently. Similar to what we're doing here, respecting people's time. So somebody's responsible for time, somebody's responsible for making sure that we follow the order of people as they raise their hands. And then somebody to do the minutes. But most importantly, like we want to start a new initiative, because I felt like even being put in this situation, it's like we need to start training the up and coming folks to start taking positions of chairs. So even like being able to encourage people to run a meeting for a month and become the chair for the month, I think is something that's cool and folks should think about, just to be able to put them in a situation where they have to communicate with the office. They have to be able to just basically understand what it takes to run a meeting in that particular month. And then the other thing was being with my past experience with the other committees, being able to effectively leverage hybrid meetings. We'll be doing something called, so having an event within the meeting, meaning every meeting, we're going to have a portion called Community Connections, where we'll be bringing in a much needed resource that would basically support youth and education and within the community. So next month, we have individuals from the city council coming to present on the educational committee and seeing what legislation is up for the upcoming legislative period, so that we could stop reacting and we could start identifying and picking subjects, or identifying how to engage certain legislation earlier than just when it happens, disagreement, and then we're jumping into the moving bus. So that's something that we're doing. So we're starting off with that. And then I think I want to connect with you so we could do tech in November. Okay. Because I think it'd be cool to be able to bring them in and they could do a presentation and we could.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
We could do the outreach for that.
You question for Marielle and then Liz.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Domingo. I applaud you for kind of thinking about building that pipeline of future chairs. So thank you for doing that. I wonder if on that point, if there's maybe an exercise, and I look to you, Catherine, and all of us as committee chairs, maybe of capturing what are some of the best practices. Maybe it's just like a couple of bullet points on things that we found, kind of running meetings, but also thinking about building that leadership succession, because that's certainly important. So thank you. And then a separate point, Domingo, for you is I'm on the DYCD Community Action Board. And so if it's ever useful, happy to kind of support or leverage that if you need anything from that end. Thanks.
Yeah, I would love it, Marielle, because part of the issue that I've encountered, both being part of this community and also seeing other peers, is DYCD's disconnection with the grassroots organizations, but particularly smaller non-for-profits, as far as like being able to support them in a transition, to be able to get DYCD funding to do programming that's working, but yet it seems so disconnected because I'm gonna use the term vaguely, but gatekeepers usually maintain all these contracts and basically limit programs that function at a high level from having access and really doing impactful work. So I would love to connect with you on that, to be able to get a sense of how can we help smaller nonprofits get connected into a pipeline that puts them in process to getting funding to be able to support our communities.
Yeah, really good point, and I've made similar observations. We'll catch up offline. Thanks.
Okay, cool.
Domingo, one of the things that I instituted at Parks and Cultural Affairs at this point years ago, it took a little while to catch on, but it's really helped a lot, is having a set agenda item where people, they don't have to sign up, they don't have to let me know in advance, they just come and talk, not a long time, like 2 minutes, and just say, hey, I'm from Friends of Blah Blah Park, or I'm this artist doing this, and they just give a little update. So that way we don't have to spend a lot of time like having the agenda where people are giving 15-minute presentations. Not everybody comes to every meeting, but over the course of a couple of years, we really get to know like who's doing what and people interact. If you might consider having sort of an open mic standing agenda item where youth organizations, parents associations, whatever, specific to youth and education, the library can come and just say, hey, it's me, I'm from PS whatever, and they give like 90 seconds about what they're doing. And that way you don't have to spend a lot of time managing, are you coming, are you not coming? Like, who cares? They come, they talk for 90 seconds, and they move on. And it winds up being like a 20-minute, 25-minute thing that lives in your agenda. Sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, but people know they have that space available, and you don't have to spend a lot of time between meetings figuring out who's showing up. They just, you recognize them in the order in which they raise the hand.
I appreciate the recommendation. Under committee business, I put a standing item called community partner updates. And I thought similarly, I only gave it 10 minutes. So the more that come, potentially the more that we could expand that.
Fantastic.
Steve?
Yeah, hi. Domingo, I'm wondering if you could, as part of your consideration of the FY25 budget request, check with the school district to see whether they have any pending plans or requests to find a new building for Wheels. I haven't quite understood for years how Wheels can really function the way it does when its classrooms, I believe, are in the prefab buildings on the south side of the street, and then they have to take their kids into the main building, regardless of the weather, to use the cafeteria or the auditorium or other facilities there. And I've always thought that maybe Wheels should have its own building.
And yet we spend all this public money on charter schools, but we can't find a home for Wheels.
Well, I would, I think
that's the complexity, Steve, of and I have like one of the things I disagree with the most is the co-locating schools within schools, because unfortunately, one, it creates a very interesting culture, because it's competitive at all times, because the other schools assuming that it might close down to be able to fully house that other school. But at the end of the day, I feel like the conversation should be around co-location and the impact it has on a school being able to provide a conducive environment you raising up safety concerns, like the safety concerns that come from co-locating a school and the complexities of having to navigate sharing spaces, and while Wheels is is one of the schools. There's a lot of schools in the district that have gone through that. And that's basically a result of the Bloomberg administration. You know what I'm saying?
But actually, I don't know of any other situation where they have to cross the street in the middle of the day to continue their regular program. I mean, most
Yeah,
of the
that's
co-locations are
that's
housed
their,
within the same building. Here we have a.
that's their elementary school. To use the cafeteria
Yeah.
inside the main
Well,
campus.
Just for the record, that's been happening since like 2005.
Yeah.
I was in the annex.
Yeah, I know,
So,
but so
It's like the TCU.
Sorry, not to cut the debate, we still have.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Steve. I'll reach out to them and ask them about that. If there is any future plans for Wheels having its own building. But
And
what that's gonna do is gonna open up a can of worms because there's several schools in the district that are co-located as well. They might have different variables, but there's still certain complexities of being able to navigate those spaces.
I did wanna, something tied actually for all of y'all. Marielle, what you had raised, would you be able to start it? One of the laundry list projects we have is like a guide to chair. And there's just too much to do, and me and Simari are only me and Simari. So if you could start that off with like your bullet points and then share that with all committee chairs and we just make it like a collaborative document, that would be super helpful. And then we can.
Can do, not a problem.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, and last but certainly not least is Daryl. You're still here.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. Take it away, Daryl.
Sure. I hope folks got to see the document that was sent out. Sorry if it was belated. This is basically the committee, and shout out to all that are here. I think Jim is definitely on the call. But you can kind of see from the preface what it is that we wanted to do, in terms of gender neutrality, just kind of updating some of the terms, clarifying some things, and also changing some things to reflect the term limits situation that we did not have under the previous bylaws. So you can see in if it's red letters, that means it's words that are that are existing that we suggest be omitted. If it's black letters with the yellow highlight, that's language we would like to see added. And then sometimes there's something in blue is more just an explanation where things may go. The formatting is not complete. I apologize for that. But also what you see is not the entirety of the bylaws. What you see, we wanted to bring to the executive committee those portions of the bylaws that deal with the elections. So because we have an election coming up, and some decisions need to be made if we are going to, in this next election, be functioning under the new bylaws, then this is the time frame for this to happen. So you can see it relates to specifically what are the roles that are actually going to be filled, because we had some changes in some of the roles. I don't think anything drastic. Changes in some, and also in some places there were additions. Some of the roles had very little description, so we added some more description based on tradition and what we know of as that role fulfilling. And then there's also changes in the election procedure itself, as well as other things that talk about term limits specifically. We've worked on a lot of other things, but this is just that portion of it. So, and I know maybe Jim could help me out here, that the role of the executive committee under the current bylaws, which we're still functioning under, is basically to provide feedback if you like. You don't have to. in writing preferably. So then the full board can take that into consideration.
Daryl, can you share, before Liz has a hand, and I'm sure other people do, do you have like a timeline? Correct me if I'm wrong, the goal to vote in October on this or November?
October.
Okay. By when?
I'm sorry, do you mean the vote of the full board?
Yes, the vote for the
Yes.
full board.
Yes.
Okay.
There's
then
no
by
vote
when
that
do you
needs to take
think-
place in the executive committee, just comments, additional changes are welcome.
Right, so by
that
when
is-
do you need feedback, written feedback from exec?
If you choose to provide written feedback, then that should be done by the next executive committee meeting. So then it could be incorporated into a resolution for that full board meeting following.
So I'll say Friday, October 13th, just for.
Okay. And so will you be doing this as one, or will folks be individually, I think, individually giving feedback?
I think I don't know if there's a preference or how it's been done. This is my first time with like this process. I mean, I would say assume everybody individually give you feedback and then you guys take that into consideration, or is it that it has to be like a unanimous feedback? Yeah, okay. Makes more sense that way.
Was
So
something
you're
said
gonna
to
get
you?
written feedback
Was something said to you? Because I didn't hear what was. It sounded like you're responding to
Liz,
something.
sorry. Liz said that it wasn't the latter, that if, for example, in the past iterations and the changes, that it was basically as a whole responded, but it was individually. So individually, by October 13th, everybody has to give you guys written feedback if they're gonna give feedback.
Jim, I think has a hand.
Yeah.
If I could comment on that,
Please.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I think as has been expressed, right now, individuals from the executive committee will give feedback to the bylaws task force. The bylaws task force will then, in fact, we might set an earlier deadline because it's not really Daryl, but the bylaws task force that will be reacting to these comments, and the bylaws task force may decide they like their version better. Now, the same thing will actually, and then of course it will get to the executive committee, but the same thing will happen at the general meeting. Ideally it won't, but technically, if a board member feels some aspect of the revised bylaws ought to be changed, they will be allowed to comment on it and so forth. I think, based upon the care that my colleagues and I, with our glorious leader, Daryl, put into this, I believe you will probably be happy with what you see. I certainly hope so. And that will make things much simpler.
Okay, Liz has her hand up.
And can I just say one more thing to kind of piggyback on what Jim said? I think there a lot of the changes I don't believe are controversial as it relates specifically to one item, and I'll be clear, because I think by and large, there was consensus or full out agreement on a lot of these changes from the committee members. But there was one spot when it comes to term limits for board officers. We made a suggestion, and I will say kind of came to consensus, not full agreement, but for that suggestion. But despite what the suggestion currently is, we really hope that there is, informed dialogue, we think, and we'll be happy with whatever happens, I think, but as long as, there's full out discussion and people understand the ramifications, I think that one particular area will probably be most talked about.
If I could just interject, the worst possible thing that could happen is we continue to use the old rules for another year. and we've managed to muddle through with them for quite a while. So, it's not like, the world's pillars are about to shake. But ideally, if we have these changes in place, we will all be much happier. Well, we'll see. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead.
You sure now? So I would just respectfully request that instead of using he/she, you use open parenthesis, S, close parenthesis, he. Because it's a more.
I'm sorry, Liz,
They made
just to-
edits to language there.
the he/she is to be omitted, right? If it's not in red, then maybe that's a mistake. But if it's in
Okay.
red, that's to be omitted.
Yeah, they omitted it. They omitted it with the title or.
Got it. Okay, I will go through it again then, and I guess send it to you. I do have a question, and I'm just looking for a little clarity on the resolution around that got passed as an emergency resolution and is gonna have to be ratified by the full board. I'm not looking to have a discussion on its merits. I'm looking to have clarification as to what it says. What it says is that if you have an excused absence pursuant to our existing bylaws, but are able to attend virtually. So for example, you have a fever, you're sick, you have active COVID, you are not going to a meeting, you are excused. But you could show up virtually. You do not count for quorum, but you do count for attendance and you may vote.
That is
If,
correct.
thank you. If you have an underlying disability in accordance with section whatever it is, and you filled out the form that certifies your disability, you could absent yourself from the meeting and participate virtually. And if you have that thing on file, not only does your attendance count for attendance, but your attendance counts for quorum.
That is also correct.
Excellent. So, yeah, so anybody who showed up at a meeting on Zoom for which their absence was recognized per our bylaws should have been able to vote, right?
Correct.
Got that, Steve? Got that, Wayne? We good now?
So wait, no, yeah, I'm confused
That's,
right now.
I have to read those emails because there's something.
I'm
separate.
confused now.
So-
It's a different question, Liz.
Yeah, his
Yeah,
question.
if I could comment on that, or Wayne can go first, but
No, I don't know if we need to go through that in detail now, but it's a different question. And it's a matter of the resolution that was circulated just before the Land Use Committee meeting on the 6th, the way it is currently written. And the rules number 4 says that if you are attending virtually and you do not have a qualifying reason for being there, obviously you cannot count towards quorum, but you can participate and vote. And in email exchanges subsequent to the Land Use Committee, Jim has pointed out that, that's not correct, that while they can participate, they can't vote, but that's not what the document says.
well, if I could comment on that.
Jim, I'm sorry, briefly, may I just interrupt real quick? Because I want to ask Catherine, from what I'm hearing, this doesn't have anything to do with
The bylaws.
the bylaws changes that we're discussing. Because what we're discussing are talking about the roles of the description of the different roles of the board officers, as well as the election process itself. I don't believe what's being discussed now is touching on that, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to shut anyone down. I think there'll be plenty of time to discuss that probably.
I think you're correct, but the matter has now been discussed, and I think a very simple explanation will solve the whole thing. There's a distinction between being remote and you have an excuse, in which case you are attending the meeting, and being remote and not having an excuse. And in that case, technically, according to the open meetings law, you are not attending the meeting, although you as an American and New Yorker have a right to participate in the meeting. You are not officially attending it. So I think that's the distinction. And that's why, and by the way, that section number 4, which, and again, has been modified to make that crystal clear, but I think there's this distinction. You know, in order to actually vote at a meeting, if you're not there, you have to have one of these excuses. And if you don't
that
have
is
it,
why I said to Liz, that was a different question, because Jim, you're hitting exactly on that. The question is how the resolution on the 6th is written. And
well, again, it's number 4 has now been changed.
Exactly, but that's the point. The way it was written and, you know, and the way that it should have been written may be two different things.
Well, no, the way it was written was not as clear as it could have been. It was actually perfectly clear if you had a sufficiently legal mind.
But then again,
and now it's clear.
We don't want to have a conversation next Tuesday, as we've had at some of the other meetings, where it gets into a long 30-minute discussion of whether we are being consistent and clear. So it should be clear when it goes out to the full board.
As I pointed out, you have a revision which is as clear can be. And if you would like to help clarify it further, I would appreciate help. We all would.
So again, I'm gonna point of order, please. Or yes, our point of order. Friday, everything's gonna go out for the general, right? Let's make sure with Jim, if that's in good place, as you see it, that it goes out on Friday. What I want to make sure is that on Tuesday for the general, we have that and we have the FAQs. Because as I reiterated earlier, there's a lot of questions that folks have that have already been responded to, and having both on hand, we can edit. I'll also add new questions that popped up today, because if you, for example, if you join the Zoom because you felt like it and no communication, then that is, you're not able to vote, right? And to make that determination during the meeting, presumably you should be marked absent, right? Because I don't know if you have an unexpected, extraordinary circumstance. So I'm gonna add that into the, or none of you will. Right, because again, we're all depending on counting on folks communicating. We're all adults and volunteers. And so it's difficult, especially let's say at a general meeting or at your committee meeting, where all of a sudden everybody's on Zoom, but nobody communicated that there was an extraordinary or unexpected circumstance. So what the office is trying to do in coordinating some of that is that folks are gonna have to be marked absent until we have a valid reason that's in accordance with open meeting law, right? That you communicate what happened to you that day. Obviously, we should find out by that before the meeting ends, but it is what it is.
So, I mean, Catherine, as I don't want to extend it, but we can have a separate conversation so that it's clear what I think is at the heart of the question and what we need to make sure we do, so that there's clarity and not a lot of confusion and not a long conversation on Tuesday.
Well, again,
I agree. Yeah. We all agree there. So Tuesday we are at, I mean, it went out, but Tuesday we're at the Hammer Health Sciences Building on 168th Street. It's a new space. We'll be checking it out Friday, but we'll be there Tuesday. Same time bound. Are there, the one thing that I did forget is this Saturday. So after we hit night market, Saturday, we're going to be at the Hispanic Society for folks who did not get to RSVP and want to. What
time is that?
12, yeah, 12 p.m. 12 p.m. It is for CB12 members. So if you didn't get to sign up or are interested, and you're still watching, let me know.
Please resend that, okay?
Yes, please. Yes.
And allow me to again mention there already is this revision that I think Wayne will be happy with, making section 4 yet clearer.
Okay, thank you. Steve, I saw your hand. Is it a motion?
No, it's a question. If you're gonna be marked absent as, maybe I'm gonna be marked absent from the land use committee meeting, and yet I participated in discussions at the meeting, so I assume my name may appear in the minutes, showing that I spoke during the course of the meeting. It's gonna look somewhat bizarre, that I'm officially marked absent, yet I'm recorded as having participated in the meeting.
Well,
We
Steve,
will
you
mark
have,
you
you have
absent.
the minutes to review,
Oh.
and you actually provided notice to the board that you were going to be late and participate. So this is not a case where we didn't know. And it was even announced at the beginning of the meeting that you would be participating virtually later. So you don't
Okay.
fit into that category where we didn't know.
Talking about people who just show up and don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was not counted as being absent.
So that means you haven't looked at the minutes, Steve?
That's correct.
Okay, okay. Get me your comments by
You should have
tomorrow.
been- Allow me to speak. Point of order.
Motion adjourned.
Oh, Mary,
Point of order.
Mary?
you could ask me.
In my
I'm making
particular
a point of order.
circumstance, I mean, I could have stayed home tonight.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
but you chose.
what's
to
that gonna be if I haven't filled out the form to talk about my disability?
No.
So what happens?
Technically, because I understand, because we've spoken about the circumstances, right? So like, if it was filed later, then we can still apply, but that's just part of the communication, right? So if you're not participating at a meeting, I'm talking about really like extreme circumstances.
People who
I'm
don't
talking about if
communicate.
I could stay home and be on Zoom, because
Yeah.
I can't, I
Yeah.
can barely.
No, you can.
You can.
You can 1,000%. I'm talking about the circumstance of someone
Yeah,
who
but do I
doesn't
have to fill out
communicate.
the form in order to?
Oh,
be-
yeah.
Yes.
I don't have the forms.
Oh, yeah, we
Can
can
I-
print it here.
I
We can print it here.
I need to sign it, like,
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were asking me like
Yeah.
rhetorically, but yeah,
No,
I can print it and you can
I
sign it. You
mean,
can-
I can't see myself being on Zoom as the chair of my committee.
Alcoholic.
Why I came here for my committee, because
I understand
it was,
that.
you know, I mean, how does it look for the chair to be at home?
No, I
You know, I
understand
mean,
that.
I struggled over here, but I'm still having great difficulty.
There's a motion on the floor and they got second.
No, actually, there's a point of order on the floor.
There was a
Right,
point
she
of
had ra-
order.
she
there
had
was a
raised
This
point.
guy's been
hand that it
talking
wasn't
all night.
recognized.
Like, y'all gotta learn how to value people's time,
I'll
bro.
say with all the over talk, the people.
They gotta learn how to value
Yeah.
people's
Hold
time.
on.
Like, talking all night.
Order.
Learn how to value people's time. That's the point of
Oh
order.
my God.
Jim, what was your point of order?
My point of order, and I will repeat this, is there's a distinction between being present at a meeting because you have some proper excuse or participating in the meeting. So we will need an additional line for people who are participating, but who are technically not present because they don't meet the criteria. So Steve Simon, if he was marked present, that is an error. Steve Simon was participating.
Okay, we're not,
And
I
that is
don't,
a
Jim,
There's a motion on the floor and they got
besides being a motion
seconded.
on the floor,
And they got
this
seconded.
isn't the appropriate time to discuss a member's attendance or not. I'll catch
We're
up
not
on
discussing
the.
a member's attendance.
No,
We're
but we're-
discussing
Motion on the
the
floor
distinction.
and it got seconded.
Actually, it does.
So.
It
I'm
does
gonna
take precedence.
Go
If
back
there's a
and look
motion on
at
the
it.
floor, I did not hear it.
Folks,
Yeah.
I don't know why I get we're tired, we're spiraling out.
With you. no.
So I'm gonna
She
look
said
at
let you
it.
speak, but then he goes into this rant. Like, there's a motion on
Hold
the
on,
floor, it
let me
got
just wrap up.
seconded.
But I didn't.
We're still live and we're still on Zoom, folks. So I will go back to
Yep.
that
I
particular
now have a
circumstance.
new point of order,
and the
unfortunately.
things are gonna be clear. Things are gonna be made clear with your edits on Friday.
That's why.
We'll talk on the side. So then, who seconded the motion?
It's either or.
Okay. We gotta vote on the motion.
What was the motion?
Motion.
So,
Motion.
What is it?
Adjourn.
Oh, we seconded it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're all in favor of that.
Yeah.
You all in favor?
Thank you.
Great, guys.
Have a good evening. All right,
Thank you.
send that out, please, Jim. Thank you. Have a good night.